Hello everyone, and welcome to this animation on the basics of using the workflow automation tool along with the Capture OnTheGo solution. Now, in the first video on Capture OnTheGo, we did introduce the automation tool, and I showed you the three basic workflows or processes that you will have in your first Capture OnTheGo implementation. So let's look through them a little bit more into details and explain a little bit more what's going on. So what I have here is a demo loaded. It's the incident report demonstration, which is actually available on demo.objectiflune.com. You can download this file and the installer will put all the templates and data mapping configurations in the right places and open this very same workflow that I have in front of me so you can follow along and test it out, assuming you follow in the prerequisites that we saw in the intro video. So the first process involves the sending of information to the Capture OnTheGo server. Now, what we're going to send to the server is not an actual document, it's not HTML content, it is only metadata, in the sense that we will have the title of the document and some information about it, along with a URL to actually download the contents. This means that the Capture OnTheGo server does not actually contain any private information beyond the title of the document, for example. In my process here, I'm actually triggering the output to Capture OnTheGo using a TXT input file. Take a look at the README included in the package to know exactly how to trigger it. But essentially, put a TXT file in a folder and it triggers this process. So ignore the input here. The important part is output to Capture OnTheGo. Now in the first tab, repository, this is where you configure the information about Capture OnTheGo server. So this is the admin, login, and password, which the store ID is generally a series of numbers that looks like a date, along with a password that is provided to you or that you chose. In my case, I have these stored as a global variable, so I don't have to change it in every different output that I may have in a configuration. In the Deposit tab, this is where we have all the information going to the Capture OnTheGo server. First and foremost, the main part of this here is the URL. Essentially, this needs to be a fully formed URL or a web address that points to the workflow automation tool on a process that will return the actual contents of the form. And this is the second process that we have. So when the Capture OnTheGo mobile application receives the metadata and you try to download the file, this is where it will actually download. Now, as I believe I mentioned in the first animation, it is very important that the mobile application or the mobile device where the application is installed have access to this web address. If you're on an internal Wi-Fi, this Wi-Fi needs to give access from mobile devices to the workflow installation, its IP address normally, or a machine name. If not on a Wi-Fi, meaning the phone is on the mobile data network, this has to be a public IP. So the actual workflow configuration or the workflow service needs to have a public IP, and this IP needs to be open so that the mobile application can access it. Note that the communication between the mobile device and the workflow tools can actually be secured. We'll have information about that in another video. Now, the rest of the information is information about the document. The cover image is what is shown in the document when it's viewed or opened in the repository and the document library. And the document information refers to the title of the document and its description when you click and you look on information. Now, this can actually contain variables that can be local variables, job informations, metadata, anything that you would normally use in a workflow process. Those are all variables you can use here. In this case, it was just a static one-use document, so I don't have any identifying information, but I'll show you another process really quickly later that has a bit more details. And lastly, the recipient information, that is either a username or a user group that will have access to this document. And the category is just the name of the category where the document is stored. So document categories. If you have more than one document in your repository, they can be sorted by category and filtered by category. Lastly, the Advanced tab is used to define how long a document stays in the repository or the Capture OnTheGo server, as well as on the device. So the keep on device for 1 day means it'll only stay in the local library for a day and then get deleted along with any data saved in the form. And keep in repository means it will stay on the Capture OnTheGo server for a certain number of days, then it is not accessible for re-download again. So this was the important part for sending the information to the server. Obviously, you'll have to adjust that to your own process. So the second process is about providing the actual HTML content of the document to the mobile application. Now, it's a very, very simple process in my case because the document is static. So here, all I have is the HTTP server input, which essentially is I'm going to receive the request from the mobile under this URL, demo incident report get document, and I'm going to respond to it with the information created in this process. Now, this actually happens to be creating web content. And there's 3 little details that are somewhat important in terms of my implementation. First, the demo incident report template obviously is the one that was created using the Capture OnTheGo wizard or created using the tool, so adding the Capture OnTheGo widgets. The other part that is specific to my implementation is the record ID. As you see, the record ID is 0. This is because I'm not using any input data file. This is a bit of a cheat. If you use the 0 record ID, it will not expect a data mapping configuration or a data model. You only have access to the contents, and you do have access to a couple of job variables inside the document. Lastly, and this is a very important part when you're using Capture OnTheGo mobile, embed all resources. The embed all resources option will essentially take all the JavaScript, the images, the CSS, and will add it inside the HTML document. It will not rely on external resources. Why is this important? Well, if you want to be able to fill your document offline, so if you don't have any mobile connection, this is really important. If the resources are external, it will require an internet connection to access. In most cases, you want to have this activated when using Capture OnTheGo. And lastly, we have the process that will receive the actual form data from Capture OnTheGo and will be able to process it. Now in this case, my process is fairly straightforward. What I did is that I have my HTTP server input that receives the form information, and then I run a data mapping configuration on the data received. Bit of an important detail, the HTTP server input will always return XML form data. This XML data is perfect for use in the data mapping module. So when you have an example, so you submit the form data from the mobile application, you can open that XML in data mapping and then create a template using that data mapping configuration. Pretty straightforward. So I have my data mapping configuration here, and then I'm actually sending an email with the contents of the form data. Let me show you what that email looks like. So the actual form that I have, so if you download the demo, you'll be able to see exactly what the form looks like, expects a GPS tag, 2 pictures, along with 2 signatures and a note. So we have here the current date of the report. We plainly see the GPS location, the 2 pictures, the 2 signatures, and the note. And this is directly done with a single data mapping configuration. And this is the explanation on the 3 main processes used in a basic Capture OnTheGo implementation. Now, there are some more advanced tips and tricks that I want to share with you, but I wanted to keep this video a little bit short, so I'll have a separate video following this one where I have a bit more advanced information that you may want to know in order to use Capture on the Go. This is your basic implementation. You can try the demo incident report, and you can try Capture on the Go online from demo.objectiflune.com without having to use Connect and Workflow. There's a demo that uses only the mobile application, so it's called Capture on the Go Online Demo. So, see you in a few clicks.